I'm super pumped to be here with three wonderful folks that are going to share their learnings and their love for a really cool piece of technology that, it's not really just about technology, but it's about how, transforms how people and organizations think about continuously upgrading their application. So it's a topic that I'm very excited about. All right, so before we jump in, maybe a quick introduction. Valentina Dari, I'm one of the product leaders for Tanzu. My team and I are responsible for all things applications and services, and among that, Tanzu Spring. Joachim, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. My name is Joachim Pasquali. I'm working as VP IT for the Fiserv company and doing a lot of Java development there. Microservices started 18 years ago in Germany and then moved to the United States.
Awesome. Shri?
Hi, my name is Sri Alaparthi. I'm an enterprise solution architect at Alight. And in my role as an architect, we develop web services, microservices using Spring Boot and Spring Cloud. And I'm definitely excited to be part of the panel.
Awesome. Tim?
Yeah, so I'm Tim Sparg. I'm an engineering lead at KLM. And so what we do is we use Spring pretty much from kind of like baggage handling through to operations portals, that kind of stuff, to just track flights, do everything with regard to our organization. For me, being on the panel here is about using App Advisor from the bottom up. Trying to go corporate hasn't quite bought into the concept yet. How do we, as engineers, bottom up go, hey, we think it's a pretty cool concept?
Nice. So let's go one step at a time. Maybe, Tim shared a little bit already about what they're doing with Spring at KLM. What about you, Shri?
Spring, actually, it's a core framework in our application stack, and we use Spring to develop microservices and, we use like Spring Boot, Spring Cloud, which enables auto service discovery and then, the load balancing aspect of it. And we also do use Spring Cloud Gateway as our API gateway and several other Spring modules such as Spring Data. So pretty much like our microservices stack is completely Spring. And, basically the aspect that stands out in Spring is its auto configuration. So we can quickly develop the services using Spring Boot, and then the template starter, which is pretty easy for the developers to start up using we also have our own custom template in addition to the Spring template initializer. So
yeah. So when we were chatting before the panel, you were telling me how just the framework itself, really brings simplification and optimizations, right? So the fact
it brings in so I don't have to worry about the little aspects. Like when we have developers, hundreds of developers developing hundreds of microservices, I don't have to worry about such as the simple things like, okay, did they parameterize the connection pooling? Did they parameterize made the Spring, for example, the Spring data Redis? Did they make them configurable? I don't have to worry about it. Spring Boot by default provides that. So it's very easy, to configure them and then make the changes.
Great. Yeah, that's wonderful. So, Joaquin, what about you guys? How you use Spring? How strategic it is?
Fiserv is a big company, right? And it's kind of divided in the banking software business and the acquiring business, where we do a lot of software for a credit card business or mobile applications. We go to Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or so on, and doing credit card business. In the merchant side of the house, we're using a lot of Java, and Spring Boot is just the base of it, definitely. I started 8 years ago to refactor a monolith into microservice, and one of the proud moments I have is that I can say that it's still running after 8 years on the really newest version of Spring Boot all the time, which makes it incredibly maintainable. We had our lessons learned with it. Everybody kind of creates his own common library or framework around everything to get his own guidelines done. We overdid it, which comes with a lot of maintenance effort. And if you then want to upgrade, then you're facing the nice challenges that you have to upgrade your own software. Banking side, we also use a little bit of Java, but not too much.
So maybe out of curiosity on the lessons learned, you said kind of overdid it on creating your own framework. Are you guys able to kind of like peel that back at this point, or are you now committed?
You have to, I would say, if you want to stay current. And by now, we actually ask if you have a vulnerability, you have theoretically 30 days, but they actually ask you to be immediately in production.
One of the things before we start talking about upgrades, Shri again was sort of sharing with us that as you align to these frameworks, of course, there's a lot of internal knowledge transfer. There's a lot of tools that you can use to get folks to align to Spring as a framework, the starter, but shameful plug for the workshops that the Tanzu Spring team is running. So maybe do you want to share your experience of how workshops have aligned the organization?
Yes, sure. So we have a few team members who have core knowledge about Spring on a whole. And then always the developers rely on those core resources to understand, or say, for example, if they want to invoke, let's say, for example, a SOAP surveys from just as an example, then how do I do it, right? So it's those set of core resources who always help them out. But, with Tanzu support, we had Spring workshops for a couple of days, and we invited all the developers, and we basically went through several different sessions, including the Spring App Advisor session as well. And, that basically helped the developers quite a bit. And we also have Spring office hours once every 2 weeks. So where the developers come in and then they ask the questions, and if we do need to delve deeper into the details, then we do have separate sessions with those specific set of developers.
Yeah, and I think this is it's a very useful tool, right. And something for organizations as you start thinking about adopting Spring and adopting more of the best practices around it. You're really leveraging the workshops as a way to train the broader organization. I like to think about it as how do you scale your architectural best practices teams, right? They cannot be overlooking every single thing that happens. So the more you can shift left, right, in the decision making, the adoption of those best practices, the better off you're going to be. All right, so now shifting to the main topic, which is really how do we keep these fleet of applications, these estate of applications, up to date. I want to talk a little bit about first, why is this critical? Why is it critical for your unique industry and your unique organization to have apps up to date, to upgrade them, to not have them drag behind? Tim, you want to jump in?
I mean, I think I'm going to give an answer that's probably very similar to everybody else, in that quite simply from a legislative point of view, we have to. That's the first thing is for us, I know, not from a legislative point of view, just from company policy, if it's a high value CV, we've got, I think it's 3 days for us that it needs to be out the door. And that can be hard depending on the code base, right? So finding out about these vulnerabilities as soon as possible and being able to kind of, reliably get them resolved is hugely important for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, sure.
So for us, and if you have any one of you have attended the Spring Spotlight session this morning, my boss Chris Roberts presented there that Alight has the top companies for whom we provide the benefits for health and then the wealth services. So we have about approximately 70% of the top 100 of Fortune companies as our clients across the globe. So it's very important for us to maintain the security and then the compliance standards. So as you indicated, it's very important to keep up with the security vulnerabilities. And also in addition to the security and compliance, we also utilize a lot of new features that are delivered as part of the upgrades, and which actually most of the times improve the performance, and sometimes it enables the developer efficiency. So, in our organization so far, we have been upgrading every 6 months. So upgrade is a very important aspect of our organization.
Okay.
Yeah, for us, it's definitely in the financial industry. Security is a big topic. You get everything approved if you argue with security, right? But the other part is also that the performance aspect is incredibly important, right? The newer versions of Java are just so much faster. If you look into a Dynatrace or other monitoring tools, if you have a Java 21 virtual machine with a hotspot, you get so many more information out of it than from Java 8. And I also see that as a motivation factor. It's not really easy to motivate developers when they have to work on a legacy application with Java 8 or even older. And if you give them something where they can actually test out all this cool stuff, including AI and everything on the newest version, that's a big factor as well.
Yeah, and maybe one more aspect which you touched on earlier is, of course, from a support cost, from an exposure, the older these applications are, the least is probably the knowledge in your organization for those versions or those more, ancient applications that exist. So we're really thinking about, organizational best practices to be on the latest and greatest really helps you reduce your cost, your risk, your exposure from really all those access. Tim, you want to add anything? Or?
I was just going to say, and then we go on to the cost of actually doing that, right? As in...
Perfect, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
let's talk about that. Short term, long term, what's the reward?
Yeah, so I mean, so we need to address the vulnerabilities as quickly as possible. And there's been this big shift of shifting left. So we put more and more pressure on the developers in a lot of organizations. So you get an email, you get a GitHub Action Dependabot, you get whatever your organization uses to alert the developers, and then it's kind of one more thing on their plate to go and resolve. So there's just like an additional pressure there as well, which we need to try manage.
Perfect. So let's go back maybe a year to a year and a half ago. How were you handling as an organization keeping apps up to date and upgrading before this magic tool came in?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's interesting. You give the developers a tool set, right? You ask them to develop some software, but you don't ask them to develop this business requirement. You also ask them to do security, vulnerability fixes, monitoring, how to log, everything. So he has 10, 15 things in his head where he should actually only focus on what he wants to develop as business requirement. And what we gave them is a tool set like SonarQube, SonarType, 45 scans, whatever, which did not do the work, which just hold him a list of topics he still has to do. And then please come back when you have fixed that. And that's not really the fun work for the developers. And it's really an interesting fact how you think about not really showing the developer what other things he still has to do, but maybe do the job for him, right? That's an interesting part.
Yeah. What was it for you guys?
For us, so obviously we had to upgrade, so there's no choice. So we actually developed our own in-house automation tool to do the upgrades, and which means like the moment the Spring Boot new release or Spring releases a new version, then it requires some analysis, like the type of refactoring that is required across the classes, the type of Spring is dependent on so many open source stuff. So
Deshaun has a beautiful graph in his session later this week that shows all the dependencies.
So it requires a lot of analysis and all that stuff, and also update the rules in the automation utility, and sometimes that means upgrade the automation utility itself. We did do the upgrades, but it's using our own in-house custom automation tool. So.
Yeah, the complexity of the dependencies and the metrics of point A to point B is certainly
requires a lot of manual analysis. So it's not an easy task to do.
Agreed. Tim, what was your experience pre-App Advisor?
In our organization, we use GitHub, so you've got Dependabot. But with Dependabot, so Dependabot, and there was an internal tool that would just alert you to vulnerabilities. Dependabot is pretty decent with actually listing the vulnerabilities, but again, it only reports. But the other weakness there is that that's at a repository level. You have to go to every single repository and configure it there. I mean, like, if somebody makes a mistake in their config, they're going to miss some stuff. It's just not it's not a very scalable way of doing that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what changes then when we introduce a tool like AppAdvisor? And I'm going to just spend 30 seconds grounding everyone if you haven't had a chance to see what AppAdvisor is. So Spring AppAdvisor, it's a tool that was introduced about a year ago, I guess, at this point. So, yeah, exactly. Time is a blur. It flies. And really what AppAdvisor it's all about, it brings a toolkit to organizations to think about a culture of continuous upgrade. And so what it brings to the table is the ability to, sit next to a developer, sit next to an organization, and really be that pair coding and pair programming buddy that helps you think about how to best approach a very complex problem like upgrading applications. And Sri was talking about it, right? When you're thinking about a minor or a major upgrade, there is always an incredible number of dependencies in the system and an incredible number of dependencies within your application, the external dependencies, the libraries, and all the components that need to be modified. And so what Spring AppAdvisor does is it very much helps auto-generate all the changes in the form of what we call recipes that need to be applied to the code base to adjust to the new contracts, the new API that are available as part of the new versions. And this is, it's a very intuitive process for a developer where they can interact through a CLI and they can interrogate the tool and really learn about the process and how the upgrade plan is generated and can be applied at small scale, sort of repo by repo, but also more importantly, as was designed from the beginning to be inserted straight into this larger scale multi-repo, fully automated CI/CD driven type of upgrade rollouts. And so, natively out of the box, you can sort of think about inserting this in your pipelines and really thinking about applying these commits, going through your testing, staging, and proper validation, but with this predefined inputs that AppAdvisor generates. So if you do want to learn more, we have a bunch of sessions where we go much deeper on how it works. But what I want to focus now is learn from our panelists here how the introduction of AppAdvisor within their organization changed those dynamics and those challenges, right, that we were facing. So.
Yeah, so when we first were introduced to AppAdvisor, there was one major roadblock we had. So we are using Maven. Maven has POM files, and we always use the parent POM to address a lot of topics in one central place, vulnerabilities, plugins we want to enforce, like PMD, checkstyle, and so on. So we had to find a solution for that. But once we have actually found a solution for that, it was so easy to integrate because it's just really a command line. And you just call it, and it does its job. And I love to write software. I always did in my life. And when I was young, I always thought I can do this faster than others. So you always write your code. And growing older, you figure out that you have to maintain every single line of code you wrote on your own. AppAdvisor, you don't write a single line of code. That's all written for you and tested. Very good for you. So you just integrate in your pipeline, and we have, whatever, in one application, 90 plus microservices. And if you run the AppAdvisor there are 80 of these microservices are not touched normally by the day-to-day work. They're just running for a couple of years, and so they still have to be maintained, but nobody kind of focus on that. Nobody's even, there's of course still an owner, but he just want to do some other stuff. And now he will get just a pull request, seeing all the changes, and if they have a good software development lifecycle pipeline with a good quality gate and code coverage, it's just going pass through to production, and that's a very interesting part. You don't have maintenance effort. That's big for us.
Sri, what about your experience?
Yeah, so obviously the Spring App Advisor, we have used it for upgrades, both for the Spring Boot and also the Java upgrades as well. But we also used Spring App Advisor for a couple of different purposes, like for example, the JUnit type framework upgrades and Hibernate upgrades. And we wrote we extended it to write some custom recipes.
Maybe pause. What are these custom recipes? How do you use them? How did they fit in? Do you want to explain the audience?
Yeah, so every, like the recipe basically, it has all the refactor rules and everything as part of the recipe. So, the Spring App Advisor comes with the standard recipes such as the Java upgrade and then the Spring Boot upgrade. Then it basically tells you what are the recipes that it is going to apply, in what order it is going to apply. And then you can also say, for example, you want to just do the Java upgrade. Then the Spring App Advisor just stops there. And then you can start applying the recipes in a step-by-step process to do the complete the upgrade process. So, but in that process, we started learning more and more about the Spring App Advisor with the help from Deshan. And so we started writing some custom recipes to do the large-scale refactoring, such as like JUnit upgrades, Hibernate upgrades, and then we had some legacy SOAP services where we needed to call from our microservices stack. So we were using like Access, which is a very old version of Access, and we wanted to convert to the Spring Web Services. We wrote our custom recipe to do that. So yeah, I mean, after looking at the Spring App Advisor, the refactoring pretty much became very easy. So especially like if you have a custom framework that you developed internally, it's very easy to extend and then apply, write your own recipe and then run it across multiple repos, not just one repo. So it became very easy, and our upgrade time has reduced significantly.
What are we talking about? What type of reduction?
Actually, 70%. So.
Awesome.
Maybe follow-up question there. So that the inbuilt upgrade tooling, how far are you guys away from stepping away from that completely? Are you able to, or have you done it already?
Yeah, I mean, you mean like when we do the upgrade, like how much percentage of it is?
So you said that prior to Spring App Advisor, you had an internal tool that you used to do it. Kind of, have you found that you're able to entirely kind of move to App Advisor? Is it like or are there parts there that can't yet be moved to App Advisor?
Oh no, we have completely switched to the App Advisor. So including like, the patch updates, if we have, like, for example, if there is a CVE and then there is a patch update that's released, everything is just, we use the App Advisor. It's just plugged in into our
maybe we'll talk a bit more about the adoption journey, because I'm really curious to understand more of how, you guys started and how it got rolled out. But maybe, Tim, you want to share a bit about what you've seen before?
Yes. So for me, it's I'm trying to go from the bottom up and get it adopted. So I'm still at the kind of single repository pipeline type stages, and there it's just remarkable how straightforward it is to just add it into your pipeline. As I said before, we use GitHub Actions. You just add it into your pipeline. There was a recent upgrade where it used to be two applications, a server and a client, and now it's kind of been rolled into one, which also makes it a lot simpler as well. So that's quite nice from that perspective. So just in the GitHub Actions context, you can make a reusable workflow of that Spring App Advisor, and you can just go, well, here's the workflow that works for us, should work for you, and kind of go from there. So from that perspective, it's really simple to allow other people to experiment with it as well.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about adoption journey, maybe sharing for other folks and maybe thinking about looking at this. How did you get started? What do you recommend folks do in terms of, which app to start from, and how did you see it getting rolled out, or how are you thinking about getting rolled out? Maybe, Joaquin, you want to start from this side?
Yeah, I think it seems like we are still in the finding phase for some things, I think. But as I said, our main blocker was the parent POM, which you had to get rid of. And then Deshaun was telling us a little bit, hey, this is how you might do it. So we have now found a way to inject every single POM the way we want to and enforce our plugins and versions there. And once that was done, you can actually start with whatever microservice you have, if it's newer or older ones. The new ones, of course, starting already with Spring Boot 3, Java 21 in our case right now. Even if Josh said we should use 24, right? We only use long-term supported versions. That's a very easy one, and an upgrade normally is just the POM version from parent POM is just going one number higher, but 4.0 comes out and there will be some challenges coming. For older ones, I think you start with something older. You might want to upgrade from Java 8 to Java 21, and there the combination of the Spring Advisor and other already existing open rewrite recipes allow you also to do a lot of stuff there. We were talking about also for refactoring part, do we use also AI stuff to just ask to do the needful?
Yeah,
but it's
we'll
not
definitely talk about that.
it's not necessarily deterministic what comes out there, but it's also something we figure out. Yeah, but once you have it in the pipeline, for us it's also a bottom-up approach. We just test it out and then we will show our colleagues, hey, this is how it's getting pretty easy. Yeah.
So what do you have to demonstrate in this bottom-up approach? How do you get other folks on board?
Yeah, it might be a big company problem, but getting new software into your world, we have, for example, repositories which have a lot of quarantine libraries. I'm not sure if that anybody else faces, but a lot of plugins actually in the POM file do not work anymore because the quarantine libraries are there. So you have to do some kind of work to upgrade them manually to figure out, and then you have to integrate the Broadcom repository into your Nexus. There are a couple of bureaucratic steps you have to go through, and once that is done, everybody else can just jump on the horse. But that's one thing you have to then show that this is actually how it works right now, and it's easy.
Makes sense. So how did you all start it, and then how did it become the de facto sort of path? Like what was?
So we always were doing the upgrades, whether it was like manually or using the automation utility that we built. So we happened to talk to Deshaun on, some of the Spring specific questions that we had. And Deshaun mentioned at that time, I think it was pretty new. So he asked like, if you can do the POC of this, then we went ahead and we used it, and it was pretty easy to start with it because we were using Gradle. We didn't really face those problems that you face with Maven. So then we saw, at that time we were like upgrading from Java 8 to Java 17. So we were towards the end, and then we had some refactoring to be done. Then we started utilizing the tool. We saw it doing pretty good, and so that's how it just became a standard in our organization. So we really we were doing the upgrades always, but it's just another step.
Yeah, and the 70% reduction, which is fantastic, is it something that you've documented internally, or was it just at that point in time to switch over the adoption that you use that as a deciding factor? I'm curious, was it instrumental to drive some of the alignment?
Right, yeah. So we... so at that point of time, then we made a decision like, okay, once this Java upgrade is done, and anytime we are applying either just the patches or we do the upgrades of, whether it is Spring Boot upgrade or any framework level upgrade, let's just use the, the Spring App Advisor. So it's just integrated into our build. Meaning, it's not automatic for us. We are still exploring the automatic one, meaning because we do have several services that have changes. The changes are still being made. They're not like, just this old services. So, but then we do have a flag that controls whether or not to trigger the Spring App Advisor. So it just became a standard because across all the microservices.
Yeah. So far it seems like the bottom-up theme is what I'm sort of hearing across the board. And Tim, probably maybe you got some good tips from these two guys on how to move it a little step forward. But yeah.
The one thing that I didn't hear you guys mention, which I found quite tricky just to get started, was when you do your first when you run App Advisor on your first application, you're going to depend on probably another internal application, which App Advisor requires you to. App Advisor needs to have a kind of like a graph of the applications that it depends on. So if so just everybody will have some internal security library. So like if you've got your application and you try an App Advisor, it says, I don't have your security module. And then you go to the security module and you've got to do that. You've got to run App Advisor on that. So there's this kind of like a graph that you've got to get started with. And with the internal apps, it is just a bit of a chore. You get it done. But the one that I found a bit more tricky was actually the commercial apps. So if you, I think the one I battled with the most was, I think it was the GCP or the Azure cloud libraries, because those are massive repositories. So, and what App Advisor does is it actually goes and checks out every individual tag because it wants to know what versions of dependencies it is using. So it goes on, and if I recall correctly, I think it was the Azure Spring library. I think it took me the better part of a day to generate those tags. And then, that's also it's not a once-off thing you've got to keep up to. There'll be a new version. Obviously, it's not going to take as long to generate. But that is something that I found a little bit tricky in just getting started.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like it's a big chore. It's probably an equally big chore if you're trying to do it manually, right? And hopefully there's a certain saving over time where you still need to update it some, but it's not as starting from scratch. So hopefully over time but it's all this dependency management and the dependency generation. Like I've been sitting with my engineering team, with my product managers that work in this area. It is absolutely the area where we are going to continue to innovate. And for example, also looking at, can AI help us here? Like as an engineering team, auto-generating and better, helping you guys auto-generate some of those dependency maps, because it's very complex.
Yeah, I understand that it is more just when you go down that road, be aware
be aware that that's a stuff.
This is something that you've got to do.
Yep, makes sense. Absolutely. All right, so what's next for App Advisor? What do you think? It's the next generation of things that we should be doing with that tool, and how do we augment it? I don't know. We'll talk about AI because we cannot have a panel without talking about AI. But before we jump to AI, any other thoughts on how we should be evolving this, or what next frontiers this can help us with? Go ahead, jump in.
Well, I mean, the obvious next point from what we were just talking about was for App Advisor would be having some kind of public repository of the recipes for the Azure thing I was talking about, because we wouldn't be the only people wanting to do that Azure one. Same for GCP. So for those big commercial ones, having something like that, which just makes your start that much easier, would be that would be. I would assume there's a lot of complexity in that, but that would be for people who are trying to, the Spring ecosystem is about making everybody's lives easier, that would be one of those things that just drives adoption, makes it
Yeah,
easier.
I mean, especially if it helps with that getting started, I really see this as an area that we should be looking at simplifying. Yeah. Shri, any thoughts on what else?
Yeah, I think we use a lot of AWS services. I think that's the same. Oh, sorry. So yeah, we use a lot of AWS services, and we use Spring Cloud AWS as well. So I think that's the area as more and more AWS services are integrated using Spring Cloud AWS, it would be nice to see that Spring App Advisor supports this.
What about you, Joachim?
I think I can just jump on that. As I said, we had kind of overdone some kind of our own frameworks in the past. So we actually already reacted on that. And new service we write, we try to be as native Spring as possible. And Spring comes up with a lot of nice features. So we are doing tweaking here and there because we want to have a logging format be the same. We want to have the security not kind of copy paste, but on one location. But other than that, we're trying to be as simple as possible. We try to get new technology out, but we don't use every single library which is out there, which kind of reduces the problem a little bit for us. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the cloud-dependent libraries will always stay. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from the customers that I interact with on a daily basis is, we've given them this very powerful tool for Spring, but for many of the enterprise customers I work with, they're very much polyglot, right? So everyone has been like, can this be a Spring++ App Advisor, right? Can you help me with other frameworks? So there's certainly something that, I'm hearing quite a bit about. And then, the other piece of the puzzle from my point of view, it's really thinking about Advisor as a component of a broader journey of modernization and transformation of applications, because upgrading from one version to another version is, of course, really, really critical, as we talked about. It's a matter of, stability and viability for your business. But there's a lot of organizations that continue to think through transformations of their application landscape. And so the ability to sort of stretch this notion of recipes, not just to go from one version to another, but maybe from one framework to another, seems a very natural evolution of what we're doing here. Jump in, Tim.
There's nothing specific so Spring App Advisor has a special source for Spring, for lack of a better thing. But there's nothing, as long as there's nothing in Spring, in App Advisor that says specifically you must stay on Spring, right?
Correct, exactly. And that's the whole point of what we're discussing here, exactly. I mean, it can very much be extended to other frameworks and other languages, and just proves that this is a good solid way of approaching the problem. For the last couple of minutes, I did want to make sure we had a chance to talk a little bit about the intersection of AI, coding assistant, and upgrades. What are your thoughts? Just very open-ended, just to wrap it up. Who wants to go?
Yeah, so I think we kind of separate this a little bit. What is your standard maintenance pipeline, and what do you want to do every day? And then the other thing is what you are doing on it as a one-time effort, right? So if I have something which runs every single night, I just don't see why I should pay tokens every night for it when I can generate something which is deterministic and works just as it is. So maybe I spend the AI then more in generating my recipe than in actually just replacing the recipe with AI. When it comes to refactoring one-time efforts, yeah, I see the power of AI there. Definitely. We are doing a lot with AI right now, learning curve wise and figuring out how we get the applications done. It's always the proof of concept. The hello world always looks very easy, but if you have Java classes of 10,000 plus lines of code and you ask AI to generate a test case, the only stuff you get back is gibberish, right? So it's not working. You have to really put a lot of effort there as well. How do you put your data into the vector database, how you generate the meta information, and then, of course, how to write your prompts to actually get something out you can use. It's not black or white. I think it's always gray.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a key point where, especially if you want to go past that sort of POC phase, right, or hell world phase, or whatever you want to describe it. There's a certain level of enterprise readiness that readiness practices, understanding of the business logic that has to be baked into, for lack of better words, think about in the MCP server itself, right? So those have to be captured. So it's not just, oh, I'm going to run it, I'm going to train the model on what's out there. I really want to think about what are the experts thinking in terms of how should I build best this application? What is the best practice in, for Fiserv, for Alight, for KLM, right? And baking those so that you can guide your developers in that, code generation, application generation process. So I agree with you. Sri, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with so basically, I think we can use AI to generate the recipes. And also maybe the Spring App Advisor, if we can support like something like, converting the WebSphere or WebLogic specific applications into the Spring microservices. And also, I think I heard like we are also probably thinking about COBOL to the Spring batch. So that would be a good use case. So for us, so yeah, I mean those are some things that I'm looking.
Team?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a great point there. Is that in a pipeline, it's not deterministic, your AI output. So that makes it really an odd thing to put in a pipeline. And I think as an industry, we're still trying to work out how do we actually use AI to help us here. What I've seen what I've seen so far is people kind of creating these prompt recipes to upgrade frameworks. And then, so it's kind of this AI guided way of upgrading, which is really manual and, other than having some kind of app advisor -- expert mode where you're kind of guiding it in some way, I would be a bit hesitant of putting it in a pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are still very much learning, to your point, like where to apply and how to best apply it. But there's certainly intersection. I agree, especially in this modernization and refactoring area, like this one-off kind of tasks where this can play a role. Awesome. Well, we're just about out of time. We do have time for one audience question, if anyone is so there. I was gonna put my money. Deshaun.
Outside of Advisor, what other tools are you using to help with your continuous migration? Anything top of mind?
Yeah, so we are using 3 tools actually. At Advisor, Open Rewrite, mainly for our coding guidelines and best practices. And then we have a stolen tool from you. We have created a small CLI tool which keeps our versioning up to date and ensures that all the POM files are actually using the right plugins. So it's sometimes funny how creative developers get. I put in a PMD and check style plugin and they just add the tag skip true. And so we just override it. So it's on again. And these kind of things we're using with a small tool. Other than that, we have the other tools.
Do you guys want to share what other tools you're using?
From the Spring perspective, we use Spring App Advisor, and the Spring Profiler, we POC'd that Spring Profiler most recently. That's pretty much, those are the tools that we use from Spring.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you guys have mentioned, and then what I've also seen is kind of using AI models and prompts to use that updates as well. But still, it feels like when you're doing a school exam and you applied the incorrect formula, but you still somehow got the right answer. It's kind of what it feels like, but I have seen that done.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully this was helpful for all. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.